Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have a breaking show for you today. First, we have a verdict in the James Craig trial. More details in the Bryan Kohberger files. A former lawyer, well, guess what? He pleads guilty in federal court to forging a judge's signature. That takes... you know what? Sean Combs, the eternal optimist, wants to get out on bond. A Louisiana woman was arrested for making some stunning purchases while receiving some Medicaid benefits. A California woman stops a home invasion on her own. Some scandalous shenanigans from a married special ed teacher who confesses to nude swaps with students. We have This Day in Legal History, our quote of the day regarding the war on drugs, and our dumb criminal of the day. That's right, the butt-sniffing bandit strikes out. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, and hit that little bell for notifications. And yes, you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, before we get started with today's docket, let me remind you to go to CrimeTalkSearch.com. When you go there, you're going to have an opportunity to sign up for a background subscription service. What do you get when you sign up with that background subscription service? Well, first, you can sign up and you can cancel at any time. But while you have the subscription, you can do as many background searches as you desire. So whether it's one search, you want to search somebody that's coming into your life, or maybe you are basically a detective at home and you want to be able to search any information about all these witnesses that you hear about. Guess what? You can do it here as well at CrimeTalkSearch.com. You're going to find out people's social media presence. You're going to find out phone numbers, email addresses. You're going to find out if they own property. Do they have judgments against them? Are they married? Are they divorced? Do they have a criminal history? And are they on a sex offender registry? Everything you want to find out about somebody, but maybe they're not going to volunteer to give to you. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com and find out for yourself. All right, let's go ahead and open the record for Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, and the breaking news. There it is, the breaking news sound here. And what do we have? That's right, we have a verdict in the case of the Colorado former dentist now, because he lost his dental license, accused of killing his wife, has been found guilty of all counts. And yesterday I predicted that the jury would go home, they would come back, and about noon they would make their decision. Well, they came out about 2 p.m. Mountain Time, and guess what? Guilty to all counts. So I missed it by about this much, but I should have known to say 1:30, 2 o'clock. Why? Because we knew they were going to figure out who's going to be the foreperson. They're going to go home. Then they're going to come back and say, all right, let's go through the evidence. And hey, the clerk has given us our request for lunch. Oh, we get a free lunch out of this. You mean we've been getting maybe $50 a day as a juror, and we get a free lunch? Yeah, let's get a free lunch, and then we'll tell them what we decided. So needless to say, the Colorado dentist has been found guilty of murder, of poisoning his wife with protein shakes, and, as an excuse to try and get out of his marriage and not have to pay that pesky maintenance in the divorce proceedings. So Craig was accused and now convicted of killing Angela Craig over a period of 10 days in March of 2023 with arsenic, cyanide, and tetrahydrozoline, a chemical found in eye drops, poisoning not just her shakes, but also prescription capsules, and ultimately administering a fatal dose as she was lying in the hospital. Now, apparently Craig stood silent with his defense lawyers as the verdict was read out, and relatives of Angela, who was one of 10 siblings, quietly wiped tears after 2.5 weeks of emotional testimony. Now, I told you I know all the players in this particular case. Judge Whitaker, defense attorney Lisa Moses, prosecutors, dealt with them all over the years. This was a tough case. And don't need to rehash it, but the defense attorney had a lot of stuff going on as well. But needless to say, Mr. Craig will be spending the rest of his life in custody. And it's always a good fact for the prosecution. Well, when your own daughter testifies against you, when your dad asks you to basically plant evidence in your favor, and then you try to solicit inmates to kill the lead detective in your case, somehow thinking that that is going to be a good idea. It's a bad idea. Bad idea. Rule number 1, never ever tamper or harm a witness in any way. Gets seriously bad for you. Anyway, Dr. Craig, former Dr. Craig, done. He maybe could have been a done criminal of the day. we got other people for that today. All right. So let's get on to the Kohberger files, right? It's official. The court has posted the judgment and conviction and notice of commitment. I have it right here in my hot hands. And I think what is interesting is the judge goes through and he says, everybody appeared. Bryan Kohberger appeared with his attorney, Ann Taylor, Elisa Massoth, Jay Logson, and Bicca Barlow. All appeared. Defendant was duly informed of the indictment returned against him for the crimes of, burglary and then multiple counts of first-degree murder, right? The defendant waived his right to a pre-sentence investigation report. Apparently didn't want the world to know what was going on there. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, just for all the people who think that Bryan Kohberger is going to appeal, that Bryan Kohberger is somehow going to withdraw his guilty plea. No. Defendant and his counsel were asked if they had any legal cause or reason to offer why judgment and sentence should not be pronounced against the defendant, and if defendant or his counsel wished to offer any evidence or to make a statement on behalf of the defendant, or to present any information to this court in mitigation or punishment. And this court, having accepted such statements and having found no legal cause or reason why judgment and sentence should not be pronounced against the defendant at this time, does render its judgment of conviction as follows. And then he goes through and imposes formally all the sentences that he did orally on the record. Obviously, all the murder counts are consecutive to each other. So 4 consecutive life sentences and 10 counts on the burglary. And also, Kohberger was ordered to pay a fine of $50,000 for each count, for a total of $250,000 payable to the clerk. Now, for all the people who think Bryan Kohberger got a really bad deal, if you want to really increase his quality of life, you should take up a GoFundMe page and try to pay his fines, because they're going to take, I think it's like 20-30% of what he receives from his commissary. And then also, pursuant to the order, the defendant is hereby assessed and ordered to pay an additional fine of $5,000 for a total of another $20,000. These fines shall operate as a civil judgment against the defendant and shall be entered on behalf of the family and victims in the indictment. Which means if he ever gets any money and he ever wins anything, yes, it'll be a small victory for the victims' families, but they will get that. All right. So there you go. It's literally official now, ladies and gentlemen. So for all the people who think that somehow this is going to change, it's not. I hate to be the adult in the room to have to tell you this. It's over. Okay? He's not going to withdraw his plea. He's not going to appeal. He's not. If he withdrew his plea or attempted to appeal, guess what? And he was successful, which he wouldn't be. I will bet you the best stake in town on that he would, even if that came about, he would just be back in the same position where he would be facing the death penalty. He doesn't want that. He was a coward, right? I mean, let's face it. The guy wimped out. He is the equivalent of all of those keyboard warriors out there. Right? And I've dealt with these people before. Some of them have been my clients, for God's sakes, where they are the meanest, nastiest person. They know everything when they're behind that keyboard. And you go to them and say, all right, here I am. Say it to my face. And they're like, oh, no, I don't want to look, I was just saying, So it's over, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, the adult in the room has to let you know. It's like being a father. I got to let you know. Here's the real deal. It's done. It's over. Zip, zilch, nada. Okay? The man confessed to murder, right? I was at a change of plea hearing yesterday in federal court, and the judge said, now, when you plead guilty, you're admitting the elements of the offense, and you are confessing to the crime. You're giving up, making the prosecution prove each and every one of those elements. And they engage in that colloquy to make sure that it's knowingly made, freely, not under the pressure of undue influence, coercion, and that you're satisfied with your attorneys. And the judge said it like I've been saying it. It is a confession of the crime, ladies and gentlemen. And you can say, oh, he was pressured, his attorneys weren't any good. Some of the comments that I have seen have just been defying logic and common sense. And it clearly shows a complete lack of understanding of the criminal justice process. But we'll get to it in a second. For those who truly want to, we'll give you Bryan Kohberger's new mailing address, ladies and gentlemen. Heck, I may even write him. Maybe I'll do an open letter like I did with Chris Watts as well. Ha! Remember that guy who everybody said afterwards, oh, he's going to withdraw his guilty plea. No, he hasn't. No, he isn't. And guess what? He never has and never will. Bryan Kohberger is in the same spot. So let's move on. But we do have some footage that reveals Bryan Kohberger driving the vehicle connected to the Idaho lanes, right? So Bryan Kohberger received a citation for failing to wear a seatbelt and warning for exceeding the speed limit by 7 miles per hour on the Pullman-Moscow highway. Now, in the footage recently made public, Kohberger is obviously the guy that's been convicted, right? Anyway, the incident occurred on back in August of 2022 in Idaho, where Kohberger was observed exceeding the speed limit. The documents and video disclosed by the Latah County Prosecutor's Office indicate that the stop took place at about 11:40 p.m., and he was cited for not wearing a seatbelt, but he was given a warning about the speeding of 42 and a 35. Now, here's Kohberger. The cop asked him, I don't see that you have a seatbelt on. Yeah, I wasn't wearing it. All right, should have shown his complete lack of intelligence, and he basically kind of crumbled under pressure on a traffic stop, for goodness sakes. If he had said, oh yeah, I had just taken it off, he would have not got a ticket. But he wasn't even that smart to do it. And you may sound like, God, why are you mocking Bryan Kohberger today? I don't know. Some of these people that I've seen in the comments to suggest that he's innocent, like, what world are you living in? If somebody pleads guilty in court under oath, admits to doing this is what I did, right? Nobody pleads guilty to 4 consecutive life sentences for murder unless you did it. And you say, oh, well, he was trying to avoid the death penalty. Yeah, but guess what? He probably could have avoided the death penalty even if he had gone to trial and got death, because it's going to take another 20 to 30 years to get there. He's 30 now, life expectancy, I think, is about average of 52 for people in custody, right? Come on. I just can't believe it. Anyway, jumping back to the video, prosecutors intended to present the video during the trial to demonstrate that Kohberger obviously had ownership and control of that white Hyundai Elantra, which was obviously central to their case. Now, the Deputy Duke, noted that Kohberger was traveling 7 miles an hour over, pulled him over for speeding, and that was about it. The driver stated he was not aware of the speed limit. The notes say that I noticed he was not wearing his seatbelt, and he acknowledged that he was not. And I cited him for the seatbelt violation. Like I said, he could have got. Anyway, during the interaction, Kohberger candidly admitted to the deputy that he wasn't wearing that seatbelt. I'm just being honest with you. Consequently, the Deputy Duke issued a citation for that seatbelt, which carries a $10 penalty in Idaho. So there you go. And another information, it appears that the FBI analysis of the cell phone tower data indicated Kohberger made more than a dozen visits to the area already covered by the tower within 100 feet of the crime scene there at 1122 King Road. And these visits occurred between July of 2022 through mid-August. Now, obviously, I'm sure he was just doing some shopping, enjoying the restaurants, all that kind of good stuff. I'm sure it wasn't anything related to stalking anyone in that particular residence or stalking or running around in the woods, like we brought you that information the other day. The newly released material provides a little more insight into Kohberger's activities prior to the killings. Now, it also appears that Bryan Kohberger has completed his intake and is now housed in J Block at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution. That's the same unit that Chad Daybell, another Idaho famous person, also calls good home. So there you go. And in even weirder and creepier information, it's been revealed that when they were searching the house in Pennsylvania when he got arrested, what did they find in Mr. Kohberger's drawer? And I think it was in a pair of gloves that was in a box. They found 2 female IDs were found in this box containing gloves, with one of those women being a coworker when he worked security at the Pleasant Valley School District. Now, apparently both women were quite surprised that Mr. Kohberger would be in possession of these IDs that were found in his home, his parents' home there in Pennsylvania. Tell me that's not weird and creepy, right? And we're also learning that there were some creepy encounters before the murders. Well, Ms. Gonzalez reported seeing an unknown man watching her while she walked her dog Murphy at one point, weeks before the murders, according to some of these documents. She told a roommate who later relayed the story to the detectives that she saw a creepy looking man on a hill above and behind the house at 1122 King Road. A couple weeks later, we told you about yesterday, the roommates found their front doors opened and damaged. So it appeared as though Mr. Kohberger was stalking these young ladies, and creepy just rises to the top. People are going to notice weird and creepy stalking in a neighborhood where you really just don't belong. Anyway, it also appeared that Kohberger appears to have spied on the police the night of the murders. Kohberger searched for a police scanner website to listen to the Pullman Police Department radio calls early in the mornings on November 13th. Browser records from his phone show this, according to these documents released by the Moscow Police Department. And investigators also found a search in Kohberger's Chrome history showing he did a Google search for Broadcastify, which would allow him to use the Pullman Police and Fire Dispatch live audio feed. Now, according to these previously unsealed court documents, he either turned off or placed his phone on airplane mode for 2 hours, beginning at approximately 2:45, and the murders took place at 4 a.m. And at the time of the crime, Mr. Kohberger studied obviously in Pullman, Washington, which is across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, where the crime scene took place. So he was clearly looking for details and was probably curious why he went back the following day, why there was no call of police or anything along those lines. He was probably just as shocked. But you know what? His shock, what's the word I'm looking for? He just couldn't help himself, right? The old adage, they always return to the scene of the crime. Apparently he did. Not so smart after all, is he, Mr. Kohberger? Not so smart. Anyway, then we got some news from documents after his arrest. Apparently, he wasn't the best inmate to get along with. Other inmates reported aggressive and bizarre encounters with Kohberger. Now, before his conviction, the killer got on other inmates' nerves, according to some of the reports. One called him an effing weirdo and boasted to a female prisoner on surveillance video that he would have beat him up if he wasn't worried about repercussions while he was in jail. I know, that guy's a tough guy too. Anyway, another said Kohberger spent hours every day on a tablet video chatting with his mom. Oh, isn't that sweet? Deep down, he's just a little mama's boy with some serious women issues. Anyway, the unnamed inmate told investigators he was watching sports during one of those calls and said, "You suck," to a player on TV. Kohberger apparently overheard the comment, allegedly immediately got up, put his face to the bars, and aggressively asked the other inmate, "Were you talking about him or his mother?" The inmate said this was the only time he witnessed Kohberger lose his temper. Apparently, we know his weak spot. Just go after his mom. Anyway, what can you say? He's just a little mama's boy deep down at heart. Okay? I can't wait to see how many people are going to start, what's the word I'm looking for? Start writing to Bryan Kohberger, telling him how innocent he is and he should withdraw his plea, go fund me, maybe get a few marriage proposals. I mean, let's face it. He's a 30-year-old virgin in prison, never been kissed, right? He's not going to know what to do with himself. Now, what we also learned through several of these documents as well, that when Kohberger was this teaching assistant that he was doing to help cover costs in school. Anyway, so they were interviewed. Obviously, they interviewed just about everybody that ever came in contact with Bryan Kohberger. And one of his teaching colleagues at the time told police that he believed Kohberger's attempt to use his authority as a teaching assistant to inappropriately interact with female students. The witness said that Kohberger often asked about wanting a girlfriend and that they discussed the topic on many occasions. The same witness told investigators that he noticed injuries on Kohberger's face and hands on at least 2 separate occasions back in October and November of 2022, just weeks prior to the Idaho student homicides. One injury was described as a large scratch on Kohberger's face that looked like scratches from fingernails. The witness also said he saw wounds on Kohberger's knuckles, and when asked about them, Kohberger claimed he'd been in a car accident. Well, which we all know that wasn't true. So not only is he a convicted murderer who's never been kissed, a 30-year-old virgin going to prison, he's a liar too. Anyway, while Kohberger had several encounters with local police due to traffic infractions, there's no record of ever being in a collision. Now, the TA described Kohberger as intelligent but selfish and claimed he would mislead others about shared assignments and leave others to complete work meant for Kohberger. Probably some of that little narcissism coming through too. Anyway, the witness added that following the murders of the 4 students in Moscow, that Kohberger started talking much more than usual, and his conversations felt like those from someone who wanted to vent. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I think as more information comes out, we already knew Bryan Kohberger was a little weird, right? We knew that. But I think as things go on, we're just going to find out that there were so many warnings and signs that this guy was just not wired right. And you can fake it till you make it kind of thing. But all that stuff eventually comes out. And somebody who thinks he's so much smarter than everybody else and has to prove it that he's going to be the best at it and he could commit the perfect crime. He just couldn't help himself. But I guess he was smart enough to realize that once the jury heard all of those facts of the case and the multiple stabbings of 52 times to 2 of those young ladies, he knows he was going to be found guilty, and he knows that he was going to get the death penalty. So he's probably thinking that he beat the system because the prosecutor showed a little bit of grace, and now he gets to spend the rest of his life in prison. Next, a former lawyer in Pennsylvania pled guilty in federal court to forging, guess what? A judge's signature. Wow. Please meet Michael Brandon Cohen, former attorney, pled guilty last Friday to violating federal forgery laws, 2 counts of forging the signature of a United States District Court judge, according to the acting United States Attorney, Troy Rivetti. The court was advised that Cohen, who was licensed to practice law in the Commonwealth there of Pennsylvania, was retained to represent a victim in a lawsuit against a healthcare company in 2022. He alleged he filed the lawsuit on the victim's behalf, but he in fact never did. And then on May 18th and October 13th of 2022, Cohen sent the victim fake court orders purportedly issued by the Chief United States District Court Judge for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, Matthew Bryan, in the victim's favor against the healthcare company. The order, which bore Bryan's electronic signature, awarded monetary sanctions and fees to the victim. But there was never even a case. There was no money. He forged it. Can I just tell you, this guy has got quinones this big to think that he could get away with one line to the client, creating an order and forging the district court judge, the chief judge of the district court judge. Unbelievable. Now, I found this story somewhat interesting because it was the Middle District of Pennsylvania. I did a case there years and years ago. I represented a client that was a dental salesman of all things, and he was apparently taking all the what's the word I'm looking for? All the samples that he would go in and say, look at these drills. They're great. Aren't they great? Well, he would then sell them and get more samples. And apparently the company didn't like it and a lot of money. But I got to go to the Middle District of Pennsylvania. There in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I believe is where it was. Well, anyway, sentencing for the good lawyer or ex-lawyer is now set for November 18th, where he faces a maximum sentence of up to 10 years and a $500,000 fine. Not good. That could be a dumb criminal of the day contestant too. Are you starting to notice a pattern, ladies and gentlemen? Next on the docket, Sean Combs, the ever optimist, would like to go home. That's right. Combs is petitioning the judge again for release on a $50 million bond as he anticipates sentencing in October following a jury's decision to spare him the gravest federal charges earlier this month, opting instead for a not guilty verdict on the big ticket items. Now, in courtroom sketches, Combs displays a reaction befitting a man who dodged the lifetime lockup bullet, convicted solely on prostitution-related offenses while skating free on the sex trafficking and racketeering accusations during the proceedings on July 2nd. Anyway, in the filing, Combs' attorneys contend that the accommodations at the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center are less than luxurious and downright perilous, pointing out that the peers convicted of comparable prostitution offenses usually enjoy pre-sentence freedom. And Sean Combs should not be in jail for this conduct, declared his attorney. In fact, he may be the only person currently in the United States jail for any sort of prostitution, and certainly the only person in jail for hiring adult male escorts for him and his girlfriend. A representative from the United States Attorney's Office has yet to chime in on that request, but prosecutors have long maintained that Combs poses a notable risk of vanishing into the air. Combs faces up to 10 years behind bars on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution purposes, essentially for jet-setting companions, including girlfriends and male sex workers, to various locales for intimate rendezvous. A guilty verdict on the racketeering and the sex trafficking, well, it would have been a life sentence. And right after his July 2nd acquittal on the major charges, the attorneys asked for a bond release, but the judge objected, ruling that Combs hadn't sufficiently demonstrated with clear and convincing evidence his harmlessness to individuals or the community at large. Combs now joins an illustrious roster of celebrities detained at the MDC Brooklyn, New York City's sole federal penitentiary, rubbing elbows metaphorically with the likes of R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and crypto con artist Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, I think, let's be realistic. Combs is going to get a prison sentence, but it's not going to be a lengthy prison sentence. He has no criminal history. He's going to guideline out relatively low, probably pretty darn close to what he's already served, but it may behoove him to stay in custody so that the judge can impose basically a credit time served when he gets to sentencing. He'll still have to do a period of supervised release, but for the bulk of it, he would be done serving his criminal sentence. So I get that he wants to get out, but it may be worth just hanging out there just a little bit longer to get a few more days of pre-sentence confinement credit to help your case of getting a credit time served sentence. Next, a Louisiana woman has been arrested for making some stunning purchases while receiving some public benefits. It is a tale of fiscal folly that could make even the most extravagant reality TV star blush. A Louisiana woman named Candace Taylor, age 35, found herself in handcuffs after allegedly treating Medicaid like her personal piggy bank while splurging on, a supercar. Arrested on Monday, courtesy of a tip-off from the Louisiana Department of Health, Ms. Taylor stands accused of Medicaid recipient fraud, as proclaimed by the Attorney General, saying that it seems as Ms. Taylor played the popper on paper, grossly understating her income to snag those benefits, all while parading her lavish loot on social media like a peacock in a parking lot. Bank records spilled the beans. That's right. Deposits topped $480,000. Car payments north of $45,000 to Audi Finance, and a hefty 6-figure withdrawal fueling real estate grabs, nips, tucks, blings that blind, and luxury services fit for a queen. No content with subtlety. She wired $100,000 to an exotic car dealer and swiped $13,000 on debit for a gleaming 2022 Lamborghini Urus. Her Instagram feed became a virtual showroom of excess. Taylor striking poses in opulent outfits and jewels, lounging beside a pink Corvette and a green Lamborghini, and just 2 months post-splurge, she cheekily dialed up the Department of Health to renew her benefits. Talk about bold budgeting. Yet, her application painted a picture of poverty, claiming a mere $2,000 of monthly income and conveniently forgetting to mention her owned businesses. From 2020 to 2024, she allegedly reapplied through a cocktail of misrepresentations, concealments, and omissions. And back in May of 2019, under the alias Candace Saylor, she reported $1,900 biweekly with no dependents. Denied. But undeterred, she tried again in March of 2020. Inconsistencies abound, like flip-flopping on dependents, but the real kicker, investigators unearthed over $9.5 million flowing through her various accounts. Taylor's post-arrest Facebook rebuttal was a masterclass in understatements. Man, watch out. That's not all true. Let's review in a couple of months. She even rallied reposts from pals proclaiming her innocence as if likes could lawyer up. Now, cooling her heels in East Baton Rouge Parish Detention Center on fraud charges, Miss Taylor's saga continues under investigation, proving that when it comes to mixing welfare with wheels, the road to ruin is paved with Lamborghinis. Be humble, Miss Taylor. Two types of people, those that are humble and those that are about to be. I think what the greater mystery is how was she making all that money? That's what I really want to know. But yet she went cheap on getting health care. She could have paid for it easily. Next, a California woman stops a home invasion. So in Torrance, California, a resident named Kiera Ortiz encountered two individuals burglarizing her apartment on Saturday. And Ortiz, who had just returned from picking up lunch with her two children, observed the suspects exiting her home while carrying her son's piggy bank. Upon noticing the intruders, Miss Ortiz pursued them on foot while recording the incident on her mobile phone. The suspects fled toward a dark green BMW. As a personal fitness trainer, Ortiz reached the vehicle before it could depart and struck the rear window with her bare hand, shattering it. The suspects then accelerated away, nearly colliding with another car. They escaped with several items from Ortiz's apartment, including jewelry, approximately $100 in cash, her son's piggy bank, and a handgun that had been secured in a lockbox in her bedroom. Following the incident, Miss Ortiz inspected her apartment and found it thoroughly ransacked. She expressed feelings of violation and anger, but emphasized her gratitude that her family was not present during the burglary, noting that the situation could have escalated dangerously. Now, Ortiz's son captured a photograph of the BMW's license plate during the pursuit. However, police later determined that the plate was stolen and did not correspond to the vehicle that was more than likely stolen. Anyway, the Torrance Police Department is conducting an active investigation into the burglary, and in a statement, the department describes such crimes as concerning and reaffirming its commitment to the community safety. It urged residents to remain vigilant and report suspicious activities promptly. Now, according to a crime analysis report released by the department in April, Torrance has recorded 86 residential burglaries in 2025 to date, which is why, ladies and gentlemen, you should be able to obviously shoot anybody that comes into your residence. I believe that you should be able to chase them down if they were in your residence and stealing your property from your house. I think that would reduce the odds of home invasions significantly. I don't know, most legislatures, certainly not in California, their assembly isn't going to do anything like that. Heck, surprised they don't require you to open the door for the burglars in California. Next, some snapshot shenanigans. A married special ed teacher confesses to, that's right, nude swaps with students. A married special education teacher from Missouri has owned up to dispatching risque selfies to a 16-year-old student, yet somehow dodged the slammer after prosecutors played a game of charge musical chairs, dropping the heavy hitters like statutory rape and child sex trafficking. Please meet Ricky Lynn Laughlin, the 26-year-old mistress of mischief, fired off explicit photos and a solo performance video featuring a battery-operated co-star via Snapchat, while cheekily requesting return favors from a teen and nudging him toward a more hands-on extracurricular activity, per the arrest affidavit. Anyway, last Thursday, Laughlin copped a plea to the rather blandly titled endangering the welfare of a child, creating substantial risk. First degree, first offense, no sexual conduct, proving that legalese can drain the drama from even the steamiest scandals. At the time of the digital dalliance, spanning September 8th to October of 2023, she was shaping young minds at the St. James High School in St. James, Missouri, a quaint spot about 75 miles southwest of St. Louis, where one assumes the curriculum didn't include Advanced Flirting 101. Now, Ricky Lynn Laughlin admitted to a nude exchange that raised more than just eyebrows, originally slapped with a felony buffet, including possession of child porn, victim tampering, second-degree statutory rape, sexual exploitation of a minor, evidence fiddling, furnishing smut to a kid, and second-degree child sex trafficking. Laughlin's legal menu was slimmed down considerably. The ultimate outcome, a mere 5 years of probation handed down last week because nothing says lesson learned like supervised freedom. Anyway, the student blessed his hesitant heart, confident to authorities that their Snapchat saga progressed fast post-pick swap culminating in a smooch. But when Laughlin allegedly extended an invitation for the full Monty, he whipped out excuses faster than a teen dodging homework, citing discomfort as detailed in the probable cause affidavit. The married special needs teacher started with a felony feast, but ended up with a probation pie. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. She'll be minding her manners under the 5 years of the watchful eye. You just can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. You just can't make this stuff up. Anyway, that whole probe kicked off after a Phelps County detective dropped a breadcrumb about some shady schoolyard vibes. Contemporaneous reports citing in a statement leading to the police to look into the situation. For good measure, the case hopped venues to Grundy County in May of last year because sometimes even justice needs a change of scenery. Can't make it up. Can't make it up, ladies and gentlemen. Next on the docket, this day in legal history, July 30th, 1870. The Department of Justice officially was established. That's right. Ulysses S. Grant signed the act to establish the Department of Justice, creating the federal agency to oversee criminal prosecutions and enforce federal laws. Obviously, this shift from the Department of the Interior's control over the U.S. Attorney's Office, centralizing efforts to combat federal crimes like mail theft and fraud. July 30th, 1916. Black Tom explosion. That's right. German agents blow up a U.S. munitions depot in New Jersey, killing civilians, leading to prosecution and the precedent for espionage and sabotage laws, including the Espionage Act of 1958. And on July 30th, 1958, the United States Supreme Court in One Inc. versus Olson, the Supreme Court ruled that writings supporting a homosexual lifestyle were not inherently obscene, protecting them under the First Amendment. Now, this lesser-known case was a landmark case for free speech in the context of criminal obscenity laws. And on July 30th, 1974, President Nixon surrenders the Watergate tapes under Supreme Court subpoena. Obviously, a major legal moment in executive accountability and criminal obstruction proceedings. And on July 30th, 1975, James Riddle, Jimmy Hoffa, vanished after going to meet Anthony Tony the Jack Giacolone and Anthony Tony Pro Provenzano, two mafia-connected figures, at the Matches Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit, whereupon he was never seen again. And our quote of the day has to do with the fight on drugs. Americans' public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat the enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive. Now, that announcement marked the official beginning of the U.S. government's comprehensive campaign against drug abuse, emphasizing both enforcement and treatment efforts. How's that going, ladies and gentlemen? How's that working out? And finally, our dumb criminal of the day. Yes, our dumb criminal of the day is a butt-sniffing bandit. So, ladies and gentlemen, gather round for today's recipient of the prestigious Dumb Criminal of the Day award. None other than Khalees Karen Crowder, the 38-year-old maestro of the mall mischief who's elevated loitering to a whole new level of nasal nonsense. Here we go. Our intrepid butt-sniffing bandit saunters into the Nordstrom's rack in Burbank, California, presumably shopping for, well, who knows. But instead of browsing bargains, he's caught on camera playing a game of follow the leader with an unsuspecting female shopper. Crouching like a discount detective, he dives in for an inappropriate whiff of her posterior, as the police so delicately put it. Because nothing says subtle like turning a department store into your personal perfume counter. Alas, the aromatic adventure was short-lived. After fleeing the scene, perhaps realizing his cologne collection was complete, Crowder popped up to a nearby Walmart where surveillance sleuths spotted him reprising his role in the women's section. Well, Burbank's finest swooped in on July 22nd, charging him with one count of loitering with intent to commit a crime, bail, a cool $100,000, which might just buy him a lifetime supply of air fresheners. But wait, There's more to this sniff and tell. Crowder isn't a rookie in the realm of ridiculousness. As a registered sex offender, he's got a rap sheet riddled with similar lewd escapades in Glendale and Burbank stretching back to 2021. One might think he'd learn to keep his nose out of other people's business, but apparently old habits die hard, especially when they're this bizarre. Anyway, Crowder's next court date is August 1st, where he can only hope the judge delivers a verdict as sharp as his sense of smell is skewed. In the meantime, folks, remember, if you're going to loiter, at least aim higher than the bargain bin of bad ideas. Stay classy, criminals, or better yet, don't. That's what keeps awards like this alive. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.